Penguin issue 9, Tom King writing with Raphael De La Torre on the art. I think this pretty much delivered. It starts off with this idea that Penguin seemingly has put his team out to plant explosives in a variety of buildings throughout Gotham. The main one of which that we see at the start is the Martha Wayne Daycare Center, a building that Martha Wayne was obviously behind and funded. And the entire issue is basically this idea that Batman simply does not believe the answer that it's the two Penguin siblings that are behind this. He thinks somehow Oswald is behind it. But throughout the entire issue, people keep giving him evidence that suggests that is the truth. But he still thinks it stinks. Something isn't quite right. He knows he's being played.
The detective hunch is just eating at him, but he's like, but I have no proof. And, Batman's the Dark Knight detective. He needs that to be able to follow the logic. So it's eating him alive. I love that internal struggle of Batman throughout this issue.
Yeah, because he's threatening Penguin. He's beating him up. Penguin's, just try to give him the seemingly lie. And then Batman's like, all right, fine, I'll hold you over the side of the building. Now you tell me the truth, or it's the pavement. And what a glorious page. Again, you talk about the warm glow of the city with the yellow lights underneath. Gorgeous page. So we also see Penguin with his wife after this, and she's like, patching him up after Batman has roughed him up. And interesting, she tells this story in her narration about when she first met him, and after they first had sex, where she stank of him, and she went home and had a shower. And it sounds like this really negative story in her head about how she felt after this. But then she said that after she showered for a long time and finally smelled like herself again, she phoned Penguin to come over because she was sick of feeling clean. And it's like, okay, all right. Tom King has somehow made this the dirtiest character, not in like a physically dirty way, in a dirty, sexy way. Kind of thing. And I got a good chuckle out of that. But what I was not expecting later on when she runs into Bruce at the function thing was I never put together that Silver St. Clair was anything to do with her. It never occurred to me.
Well, because it's Silver St. Cloud, because I got hung up on this. As I looked, and I don't know if this is just retroactive, them going and changing, but yeah, I had always known that it was Silver St. Cloud was the socialite, and she's St. Clair. So, yeah,
it felt like a reference. So it felt like they were evoking that old character.
I feel that that's definitely what the reference was, but it's definitely because I googled Silver St. Clair and nothing came up. Silver St. Cloud did, so it wasn't like it was they changed the name later. Let me just double check here. But regardless of what it is, I do like that. She also was a she's part of that group of socialites in Gotham, right? Even before Penguin, before she got involved with him.
Yeah, and Silver's a character who's not been in Batman comics for a long ass time. You're going back to the 80s and stuff and 90s to get her as a sort of character that's popping up as a love interest for Bruce occasionally. So even Gordon's like, hey, we looked into this, and the feds are saying they have got a man in the inside at the Iceberg Lounge, and that corroborates the idea that the siblings are behind these bombings. And he's like, this stinks, it doesn't work. And of course, if you had forgotten about it, it reconfirms it for you later that Penguin's doing all this in the behest of the FBI, particularly the one, woman
Agent F.
With the missing eye, because she lost it in Killing Time. And I was like, oh yeah, this is all. So yeah, this whole idea that the feds fed a lie to Jim Gordon and said, hey, what this is going on. They're backing up Penguin's lie to Batman here because they want something from this. And it's all, I don't know. I like that detail. It was like, okay, it's because, and that's why it's all adding up in a way that Batman can't understand, is that there's multiple sources corroborating this lie, which doesn't make sense to him, right? But it does keep reinforcing it.
Right. So logically it makes sense, but it doesn't on the gut check level, right? Which is kind of how Penguin's always operated. is that he's so meticulous, but something always just feels off, right? Because like Batman always knew that his mom just didn't jump, right? Like it didn't add up that she just, she was pushed, but he couldn't prove it. So I like that it ties it back to their history in that way too.
Yeah, and then Black Spider's seen leaving another building that he's blown up, right, for Penguin. And it's actually quite a funny transition because he's like, why did I agree to do this? Did I even ask what this was for? No, I didn't, because it was the Penguin. And then you get to like the next page and he's like, I wake up that night in bed, or he goes to sleep in bed, and then he wakes up tied to a tree and there's polar bears around him. And this is Batman's newest interrogation technique, where he's demanding answers, and he's like, well, you can stay with the bears, or you can start talking about what the hell is going on. And everything he tells him, again, further corroborates the story.
Look, I'm not a bear expert, right? But I do love bears, right? And I know this is comic books. However, even the people that handle polar bears don't go in with them at a certain point because they're too unpredictable. Because as being one of the all-time apex predators, polar bears just eat whatever they want, including handlers. So the fact that Bruce would have any control over these things, right? It does almost add a little. Bruce is becoming a bit unhinged, and let alone one polar bear would have sufficed. He has 4, right?
What I like about this is that he throughout the issue, when we get Bruce's narration, there's a couple of points where he's like, I try not to think of my mother and them like burning her portrait in the building she cared about, and this this care center for children. This idea that whoever did this, and he thinks it's Penguin, has desecrated something of his mother's is really sort of struck a chord. Now, admittedly, the bear thing is a bit extreme, but I mean, maybe he's got like some fancy sonic device to knock them out or something, so that there's no danger. I don't know.
Again, this is only something that bothered me, knowing how bears act, and from talking to bear handlers at zoos and at marine parks and whatever. So it does make for a great laugh though, because Black Spider tells him "F you," and he goes, "If you don't talk, I have no reason to stay." And Black Spider's like, "This isn't how you do things. You're all bluff." And he goes, "All right, goodbye." And Bruce turns to walk away, and that's where Black Spider talks, right? So it makes for a fun interrogation scene, And also, when you see the polar bears, you think, "Oh, is this the Penguin tying up loose ends?" And it's like, "Oh no, it's Batman." So that's a nice little swerve too.
Yeah, and then we get Agent F. Well, she's on the Peloton, and she's annoyed that Penguin has called her, and she's swearing left and right. But he wants something from her, and then we get the sort of the gala scene where Penguin's wife. What's her first name again?
Juice.
Lisa.
It's Lisa Sinclair.
It's because I kept wanting to say Silver. It's not Silver. That's a sister.
Yep. The cousin.
She. Sorry, cousin, not sister. Well, that explains the last name difference then.
Right. Well, no, I know that, but for them just to play off the Saint name, right? Saint doesn't mean necessarily that they're related, So I'm just saying, it made me think like, has it always been Silver St. Clair? Have I always just read it wrong?
Yeah.
Or
See, I never had this thought when I read it, but you went on your little rant. I was like, I'll just let him go because I don't remember like having a bit of confusion. But now that we've gotten to the bubble again, it says cousin. I'm like, well, yeah, of course they can have different last names. It's fine.
Yeah. But I just think this, I mean, again, I don't know. They could have just said it like, it doesn't have to be Silver St. Cloud. It's the Saint name, I think, that inspired King to pull that off, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, it's maybe a coincidence that 2 branches of the family have Saint in their name, but whatever. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
They're all rich socialites, so I guess it's more likely.
True.
But yeah, Bruce gets all handsome, and her narration's kind of funny here as well, because she's like, "Oh, like this is like the sort of man that every woman desires," and yet all I can think about is that short, fat bird, and his smells, and his big umbrella, which a bit of comedy there. But yeah, so no, and she basically is being very observant and is calling out the booze is actually just apple juice. And that this is all just sort of an appearance. It's not really, because she takes his glass, which is the key part of that, is that he's not drinking alcohol. He's just pretending to be. And of course, my mind immediately went back to that cliffhanger where Penguin got the help to figure out who had ordered or who had paid for whatever, and it
Yep.
turned out to be Bruce Wayne. And it made me think, does she know? Like, in this moment, does she know that she's
Right.
talking to Batman right now? She might.
Right. Well, I also like that it shows how that she's like you said, observant in her own right. So the fact that she sees, oh, he's not drinking like everyone else does, but I almost expected Bruce to respond as like, yeah, well, I'm a recovering alcoholic, to try to make her feel bad. But I was like, oh no, that's just a trick that I've used to get people off why I don't drink. So it's not very often I project onto Batman.
Yeah. So, and he even kind of questions it. Oh, you really believe that it's the Penguin children that are behind these explosions? And she's like, well, I mean, I don't know. And she just kind of deflects by talking about how strong he is and the apple juice again. But yeah, so Batman makes his way to the Iceberg Lounge. Gloria's full page spread, and this is where he's like reminding himself not to think of his mother because he's just going to get angry. He doesn't want to start off angry. And then the end of the issue is Penguin get what he called the agent for, which is that he wants to see Rita, who he meets in the back of a van. Now, I actually had to go back and remind myself exactly who Rita was because it had been a little while. So this was a big thing in issue 1. This was who he was with.
Yep.
In his new life, in issue 1, he was in love with Rita. And the way that Agent F convinced him to get on board and do everything she wants him to do is they basically made up a bullshit charge that Rita was aiding and abetting him for a lot of his murders, even though they all happened before he met her. And they have arrested her and they're basically holding her hostage, so Penguin will have to do what they say. So, yeah. So, because he said Rita, right? And I'm like, Rita. That's not ringing a bell here, guys. Rita?
Gotcha.
Who's Rita? And so I was like, okay, I went back and checked, and I was like, okay. I reminded myself of this. I'm glad that they brought her back in now to. It's probably a really good time to remind us of the reasons why Penguin was even inspired to do all this in the first place.
Yeah.
Because it is notable that he
becomes a different person when he sees her.
Yeah, he breaks down, and like the last panel is him crying in her lap, and she's holding him. And I think it really contrasts. I kind of skipped over this page earlier on, but there's a scene because there's 2 parts to like Penguin and his ex-wife in bed together, right? There's one where they're just kissing and she's telling the story in her head of like the first time they had sex. The second time you see them and it's after they've had sex, she's just saying he always gets like this after, quiet, and she makes a comment about the smoking and how that's just part of the act, and she's like, who are you? And the final panel of that page is Penguin looking right at the reader, and he just says whack, whack, whack with this kind of smirk in his face, like he's still very much in character. And he contrasts this to the end of the book where he's with Rita and he breaks down into her lap crying. And like, this is still an act when he's with the ex-wife. Like, this is, he's not really being him anymore. And I think the ending almost implies that everything he's doing, like, obviously this is who he was and he is good at this, but at some level, everything he's doing right now is an act to some extent. And
it's an act of love, though, because he wants to get her out because she's wrapped up in something that's not her fault, right? Her mistake was falling in love with him.
And don't get me wrong, I do expect that by the end of the story, for some reason or another, he's going to have to stay in this life of Gotham rather than going back to his like happy life with Rita. Let's face it, Rita's probably going to die or something, and that's going to send him down a warpath.
Yeah, it's almost like from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's like Angelus Angelus versus Angel, right? Where Penguin's kind of his Angelus side, the evil, right? But then here, when he's Oswald, this is his true self. This is his conscience, and this is why he's doing everything. So, I would be careful though to jump to the word conscience. I don't know if Penguin gives a shit about the bad things he's doing here. Maybe he does. Maybe he is at a point where he does care about those things. I think he's just. I could argue that this final moment is just him. The weight of keeping up this act is just so difficult, and because he wants to save Rita, that's what's making him break down here, rather than that he actually feels bad that he's doing any of the shit that he's doing. Well, yeah. When I say conscience, I mean he's doing this for her. She's the motivating, right? It's not right or wrong. It's what's right to get her free, right? And so, Like that page right there with the white background, just the pain in his eyes. Like the Latour just kills it on that, because that could have had no dialogue or anybody, and you know exactly what's going on in his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even that line, "I'm no good, there's nothing good in me," I suppose that does back up your idea that there's a bit of a conscience element to this to play. It's almost like he felt like he was becoming a good person with her,
Yep.
but he's found it much easier than perhaps he thought it would be to just be
To
who
fall
he was
back.
before. But yeah, it's very an interesting dynamic, I'm glad that the book that King has went out of his way to remind us that this is the whole reason for this, because like I said, like when it got to this page, I was like, wait, I don't know who this is, and I had to go back and double check.
Well, yeah, in my deep mind, I remembered, but I had just forgotten because just the entire caper aspect of it, right?
Yeah, we spent so long with him, like building his team and getting the help. Which, by the way, I laughed when Agent F turned to the help and went, "Who the hell are you?" That was funny. But yeah, like we spent so long building the team, and now he's coming back, and like these first interactions with these kids, and all the Batman stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was an entire other motivation, like for why he was doing this in the first place. So I was really glad that they reminded us of that. I think it was a good point to do it. If anything, it might have even been useful a bit earlier, like maybe when he first got back to Gotham, just to be like, hey, here's a reminder going into the second arc of this. This is why he's doing this. This is what the core reason for him being this is. And I think it also adds this idea that every single other person we see narrating don't actually, like, because they all don't know what's going on in his head, and that's been part of the magic of this book, is that everyone else is sort of narrating and sort of speculating or saying what they think Penguin's thinking or what he's going to do. This idea that we're here seeing was actually in his head here in this moment. We're seeing what he actually cares about here. But everyone else is like, oh, he's scary. He might do these bad things to me. He may do those bad things, but that's not the true him in his head that we're seeing here at the end of this issue.
Well, and that's what I like too, is that there's no one else in the van with him. It's just him and Rita.
Oh, that's important. It would not work if there was anyone else there.
Yep. Because it's
just them.
And that's where, it is just, man, I never thought I'd care about the Penguin this much, because I'm kind of rooting for him, right? Like, he's a very complex character. It's kind of Breaking Bad that way, right? Where you're kind of rooting for Walter, even though he's doing bad things. You know, it's a man's soul. It's like his search for purpose.
I would actually say that's the wrong comparison. I'd say Better Call Saul's a better comparison. Because Rita's kind of like Kim here, in that she's the innocent one, and I can kind of see the end of the story being Penguin making the noble choice to let her go and be away from him, because like being with him is just going to lead her down a path that he doesn't want to put her through. I could see that being very much the lesson by the end of this. But how great would an
Odenkirk Penguin be, though? Now that you say that, like,
I don't know. I'm trying to imagine him being menacing, and I don't know. I
think he can be. There's a certain darkness to him that maybe not like this, not like violent sociopath, right? But I definitely feel like Odenkirk can play the guy that you don't want to cross. You know. So, but yeah, no, that is a much better of Saul than Breaking Bad. However, it is the complex character where I'm liking Penguin and I want him to win, but at the same time, what is he winning? Right? Is it that he gets to be the big scary person that's easy for him to be, or is it that he gets Rita's freedom? And does Rita's freedom mean freedom from him as well? Like, so the ultimate goal is to get her out of there, but not be with her, and it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory at that point.
Well, I don't think that's his goal. I'm reading ahead there. I don't think that's his goal right now. I don't think he's learned that lesson. If that's where we're going, where he wins her freedom, but then says, "No, I can't come with you. I have to stay away from you." I don't think he's got to the point yet. I think that's a towards the end of the story realization for him. I don't think that's what the active goal is right now. The active goal right now is just to get her free.
No, this is definitely one that I can't wait to read back through, because there is a lot of layers going on here. And also I want to point out the very beginning, the narration from the Silent Majority, where he doesn't know who's the real him. That also goes into kind of the Penguin, right? Because the narration's all about like, well, I don't know which one died. I don't know what learned, I don't know who we learned. And then we see them setting the bomb with Major Victory. And I think that's a very, another complex thing with that character, right?
Yeah, that narration was really interesting because it was kind of like almost as if it was like Two-Face and like Harvey like narrating, but he wasn't the one in control. So he's like, "Oh, Two-Face is doing this thing, so it's a good thing I'm not here." That's kind of how it read, and I was like, "Okay, this is interesting because it's like a different character that I'm not really that familiar with." So
yeah, but it's like when multiples of a person die, like what does that mean for them? And like who was the real one? And I think that also it reflects Oswald at this point.
Yeah,
like, is the real one at this point? Is it the real menacing scary guy, or is it the guy breaking down crying to Rita?
Yeah, I think thematically that it goes along with that really nicely. Yeah. But hey, no, this is excellent because like I think all this conversation has been kind of rich in terms of like we're talking about characters, their motivations, and that tends to be when when I'm reviewing TV shows, when I can talk about character motivations and what's actually making them do certain things, that tends to be when I like, oh, this is excellent writing, and I feel like this book is definitely tinkering with that. So really, really good. What are you giving The Penguin, Matt?
I'm gonna give this a 9.
Yeah, I'm going 9 as well. It's excellent stuff.